Hi everyone, my name is Shalhevet Schwartz, and this is Gefet on Daf Yomi, a joint project of Hadran and Yeshivat Drisha. As we come down the home stretch of Masechet Bava Batra, right now we are on Daf Kuf Samech Dalid, getting to the end of the Masechet and really the end of all of Masechet Nezikin. We're going to deal today with a sugya that's a little bit less in the weeds with all of the contract law and Dine Mamanot that the parak has been dealing with, and rather we're going to explore a topic that sort of comes up via a little tangent in the Gemara, but a topic that really I think has a lot of relevance for the lives of contemporary Jews, and someone trying to serve God. We'll be dealing with the topic of Iyun Tefillah, of this phrase Iyun Tefillah that shows up on our daf. And there's a machlokes rishonim as to what it means. That, and through this machlokes, we can see that really the question emerges of what actually is so challenging about tefillah. What according to these Rishonim is so hard for for Adam Hamid Palel, for a person who tries to daven every day with consistency. So the sugya really emerges, and this phrase appears via this tangential discussion between Rebbe and his son, who who in the context of a get that is kashur, right? A get that's tied up and folded up, and therefore you can't really see the date in it. Rebbe and his son have a conversation about it. Rebbe's son says that no, it was actually not written by me; it was written by someone else, and then ends up complimenting that person's handwriting in a sefer Tehillim that he is reading. At which point he is rebuked by his father, by Rebbe, who says even complimenting somebody's handwriting, you shouldn't do it because it is avak lashon hara, right? The term avak lashon hara refers not to saying something actually bad about somebody else, but rather to saying something good about somebody else, through which one might come to say real lashon hara, or bad things about someone else might emerge via those good things. And kind of through that little momentary spat between Rebbe and his son, we hear this memra of Rav about everyday sins, about the averot she'ein adam nitzol mehem b'chol yom. So Amar of Amram Amar Rav Shalosh averot ein adam nitzol mehem b'chol yom. Hirhur havera iyun tefillah and ulishon hara savadeta ela avak lishon hara. So Rav Amram says in the name of Rav that there are three sins that a person can't that are everyday sins. A person can't save himself from them any day, which is to say that a person finds himself nitkal b'hem, or he finds himself falling prey to them each day. And the list of sins here are Hirhur avera, contemplating sins, or being maharher in sins, usually understood to be sexual sins. Iyun tefillah, which that's the phrase that we're going to explore together today, and lashon hara, which is then the Gemara explains it's not all lashon hara. Real lashon hara, bona fide lashon hara, might be that we could avoid, or at least avoid doing regularly. But avak lashon hara, right? This kind of roundabout, almost lashon hara, literally the dust of lashon hara, which we fall prey to even when we say positive things about other people, that we fall prey to every day. So now, iyun tefillah, right? Iyun tefillah, the words iyun tefillah, literally, it seemed like, right, iyun, right, analysis, contemplation, something of that sort. So, but right, if what it means is that, so how is iyun tefillah a bad thing, right? Hirhur avera, I understand why it's bad. Avak lashon hara, I understand why it's bad. In both of those cases, I also understand why the Gemara might say that they are everyday sins, that ein adam nitzol mehem b'chol yom. But iyun tefillah, it's not quite clear what it is, why it would be so bad, and why it would be the sort of thing that a person might fall prey to every day. So the Rashbam on our sugya explains that iyun tefillah, right, despite the literal translation of the words, actually does refer to something bad and something that might fit for that for that reason on our list. So iyun tefillah, says the Rashbam, yesh mefarshim she'achar shehitpalel dan bilibo she'yishalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu scharo ve'aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzarcha ve'yishma tefillah lefi shemitpalel b'kavana. So iyun tefillah, the contemplation of in the tefillah is is not iyun during tefillah according to the Ramban and during the Rashbam, sorry, but it's contemplation after tefillah about about how good my tefillah was and what therefore I deserve. So iyun tefillah according to the Rashbam, that someone who believes after they davened that because they davened well, they deserve that their prayers will be answered, right? That that God should give me my reward because I davened well. So this idea that right, Iyun Tefillah, what the problem with Iyun Tefillah is that I think that I am deserving based on what was so good about my tefillah. Given that we can understand its placement in the list as something negative, right? That the idea that I would assume that my prayers would get answered um, might not be such a positive attribute, and it might be something that I would want to avoid. Tosfot further explains, right, goes with explains first this explanation of the Rashbam, and it links it to another sugya, to a sugya in Masechet Brachot. Right, Tosfot says, "Rak shemiharher b'tfilato," when he thinks about b'tfilato, not during his tefillah, aka doesn't concentrate, thinks about something else during his tefillah. Rather, meharher b'tfilato, we have to understand Tosfot here as saying he is contemplating or in his tefillah, meaning about his tefillah, right? He's thinking afterwards about his tefillah. K'damrinan b'brachot. Right, as it says, Masechet Brachot, ha'ma'ayin b'tfilato bali de ke'ev lev, right? Someone who is ma'ayin b'tfilato, right? Who does iyun tefillah, right? The bali de ke'ev lev, it causes pain of heart, which is to say, it's a bad thing, right? And right, as it says there, elu devarim hamazkirim avonotav shel adam, kir natoi ve'iyun tefillah. So these are the things that remind God of my sins, right? The iyun tefillah is seen as something that reminds God of the ways that I am bad. Right? And here it seems to be on a list of things that are negative. If we take a look at the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, right? The Gemara in Masechet Brachot, we see that Rav Yehuda there's a member of Rav Yehuda that about things that are good that are ma'arichin yamav u'shnotav shel adam. Ma'arichin yamav u'shnotav shel adam. One of the things on the list is ma'arich b'tfilato, somebody who davens for a long time. The Gemara then asks on that, ma'arich b'tfilato ma'al yutahi, right? Is ma'arich b'tfilato really a good thing? Because we see kol ha'ma'arich b'tfilato u'ma'ayin ba sof bali de ke'ev lev. Right, that's the Gemara that Tosfot's quoting, that someone who davens for a long time and is me'ayin b'tfilato is going to come to bali de ke'ev lev, come to a pain of heart. And then the Gemara ends up answering that question, right? On the one hand, it seems like ma'arich b'tfilato is a good thing. It's ma'arich shnotav shel adam. On the other hand, we see that ma'arich b'tfilato u'ma'ayin ba is sof bali de ke'ev lev. So Halo Kasha says that the last line of the Gemara, had me'ayin ba, had lo me'ayin ba. So ma'arich b'tfilato, davening for a long time, is a good thing, but only if you're not me'ayin ba. And if you are me'ayin ba, then you're going to ba lidei ke'ev lev. So if we understand, according to the Rashbam's explanation, that ma'ayin b'tfilato is expecting on some level that my prayers would be answered because of how well I daven, for sure, someone who wants to daven for a long time, that's great. But if you want to daven for a long time and you think that because of that, magia lecha, that right, you deserve that God ought to answer your prayers, and you expect that God will answer your prayers. So due to that, at that point is a bad thing. It's mazkirin avonotav shel adam. You're going to yavo lidei ke'ev lev. Not good. Not a thing that we want to support. So really, and right, what we end up with is these two sugyot, right? Iyun tefillah is something that, according to our sugya in Bava Batra, ein adam nitzol mimena b'chol yom, right? Something that you can't escape. And right, it's bad. It's mazkirin lo avonotav, right? That it will remind God of the ways that I'm bad. Iyun tefillah here is something negative, and it's defined as according to the Rashbam and the way that Tosfot's understanding it here on his first understanding is the thought after tefillah that God ought to grant me my request because I quote unquote davened well. And really, according to this understanding of Iyun tefillah, right, the challenge of tefillah is being able to sufficiently grasp the complexity of our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Not thinking that tefillah is this game that I play, right, through which I kind of pull on the strings in a very particular way, and if I do it well, then automatically God will grant my requests. No, there's something kind of complex and theological going on in our world of tefillah. And we have to part of the part of the experience of being a real servant of God and really davening properly is the knowledge that I don't fully understand the whole picture. I don't fully understand when or why God grants my requests and when or why God does not. But that's a real challenge, and that part, right? There's something natural about the idea that if we daven every day and and concentrate really hard on trying to do that well, that we think that we're deserving, and the understanding that maybe when push comes to shove, we don't fully know the bigger picture. That's the challenge, and it's quite difficult um, to achieve. Now, Tosfot, right after bringing the explanation of the Rashbam, is going to bring a challenge to this explanation, which is that sure, we can understand on this explanation why Iyun Tefillah might be something negative, but is it really something that Ein Adam Nitzol Mimena B'chol Yom, right? Is it really a sin that we fall prey to every single day? So what does it say? אבל אינו נראה. דילמה אינו ניצול, right? דילמה אינו ניצול ממנו בכל יום. הרבה בני אדם אינם מצפים מתי יבוא תפילתם, שאינם מכוונים כל כך שיצפו תפילתם. Right? First of all, maybe it's not actually that challenging to grasp that the kind of theological complexity of tefillah, but there's right, an even lower level problem, which is people don't have such good kavanah that they think that because they davened so well, they deserve like their prayers be answered, right? Most people right don't actually have good enough kavanah that they would expect their prayers to be answered. So the sin really wouldn't be maybe once in a while when I have like an amazing Shemona Esrei, maybe on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I would think, okay, now I got it, now I deserve it. But every day, people's kavanah just really isn't that good. So, according to Tosfot, he's going to have to give a different explanation of what this is. What is Iyun Tefillah really? So, when you're earlier, the Iyun Tefillah shehura she'einam mechavnim tefillata. Actually, the Iyun Tefillah, when it says that Iyun Tefillah is bad, what does it mean? Right, when it's Iyun Tefillah on this and it shows up on this list, really means it's referring to the fact that people normally are not do not have proper kavana when they daven. So now he's quoting a different Gemara, the Gemara in Shabbat, which many of you may know because a very similar Breita is something that we recite every morning as part of Birkot Torah. That Iyun Tefillah where Iyun Tefillah is presented as something good, right? So here in the Gemara in Shabbat, it's brought in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. We know it in the Breita that dvarim she'adam ochel perutehem ba'olam hazeh ve'akeren kayemet lo le'olam haba. Things that we do in olam hazeh, and we get like slight reward for in olam hazeh, but the real reward doesn't come until olam haba. And on the list, right, among hachnasat orchlim, bikur cholim, etc., is Iyun Tefillah. Iyun Tefillah here is presented as something good. And according to Tosfot, what does Iyun Tefillah seem to mean there? It means actually concentrating and paying attention when you're davening. It means kavana during tefillah. So therefore, Iyun Tefillah means concentration during tefillah, and it's a good thing. So then, how do we understand it in the list of Ein Adam Nitzol Mehem B'chol Yom? So umizeh, says Tosfot, Ein Adam Nitzol B'chol Yom, right? The fact that they don't escape it every day, they don't escape the sin of it every day. What does that mean according to Tosfot? So you have to sort of understand it as the opposite. So every day we sin, but we fall prey to the sin of Iyun Tefillah, which isn't to say that we fall prey to doing this bad thing called Iyun Tefillah, but we fall prey to the sin of not being able to sufficiently la'ayin b'tfilatenu, not being able to sufficiently have kavanah b'tfilah. Meaning, here are three everyday sins. We do hirhur avera, we do avak l'shon hara, and we do insufficient Iyun Tefillah, meaning we do insufficient kavanah during Tefillah. And he quotes a really acute Yerushalmi here in which Rabbi Matanya says, "Machazakna tivuta l'reisha dechimate l'modim kara megarmi." Right? I give thanks to my mind, my unconscious mind, that at the moment I get to modim, my knees bend, which is to say that even though I am not really sufficiently miskavein during my tefillah, even though I don't have enough kavana during tefillah, yet even so, when I come to modim, something about I have enough kind of instinct when I daven that I can kind of on autopilot. I bend when I get to Modi, which I can imagine is an experience that many people share. I too have had those moments where I've been insufficiently mitkaven in my tefillah and have yet my body sort of knows where I'm up to, even if my mind does not. But this is a raya, according to Tosfot, from the Yerushalmi, that look, Havana during tefillah is not something that we're great at every day. We're certainly not so great at it every day that we would think that we deserve that our prayers all be answered. Rather, the thing that we fall prey to every day is insufficient Havana in tefillah. So what Tosfot here links the understanding of the words Iyun Tefillah and our sugya in Bava Batra, not to the sugya in Brachot that he quoted before, but to the sugya in Shabbat, where Iyun Tefillah is presented as a good thing, as meaning concentrating or kavana during Tefillah. Iyun Tefillah is something positive, and what it means is just kavana. The Ritva, right? So, given that we have these three different sugyot, our sugya in Bava Batra, which is a little bit ambiguous and it's not clear what it means. There's a sugya in Shabbat where it's clearly presented as something good, and there's a sugya in Brachot where it's clearly presented as something bad. So the Ritva sort of brings all of that together and says that actually we don't have to expect total consistency in the language of Iyun Tefillah and what it means in every place. So Sinan Hatam, right? Shalosh Devarim Maskirin Avodotav Shel Adam, and Iyun Tefillah is on the list. He quotes it from Rosh Hashanah, even though it's also in Brachot. The ein inyano ki iyun tefillah ha'amor kan, right? That iyun tefillah isn't the same as the iyun tefillah here in Bava Batra, right? He ends up reading our sugya in Bava Batra like Tosfot. She'im kein ein lecha adam nitzol mizeh u'lechol adam hayom maskirin avodotav b'chol yom, right? If iyun tefillah, the really bad kind, were the kind in Rosh Hashanah, or the kind in Brachot, which is to say, expecting my prayers be answered, then we would be in really bad shape. Then we'd be maskirin avodotav b'chol yom. God would see all of our faults every day. And we also know that in Masechet Shabbat, we see it as Devarim she'adam ochel ba'olam hazeh ve'akeren kayam le'olam haba, and one of the things on that list is Iyun Tefillah. So, right there, Harei she'amar oto lishvach ve'ilu be'idach amrinan lignai. So we know that some places the words Iyun Tefillah, the phrase Iyun Tefillah means something good, some places it means something bad. Elavadai says the Ritva elu hein l'shon echad b'inyanim chalukim. So clearly, the phrase Iyun Tefillah is used to mean different things. We don't have to expect total consistency in the Gemara's language, right? Iyun Tefillah she'amru shemaskirin avonotav shel adam, the kind that's maskir avonotav shel adam, that reminds God of all of our sins, is when it's used in that context, it means me'ayin mitzvah tefillah shetikayim, right? I think that my tefillah was so good that my prayers ought to be answered. The Iyun Tefillah she'scharo merubeh, the kind that gives us a lot of reward. When someone has sufficient kavanah, that actually has sufficient kavanah when they daven, and that's the kind that's the sin that we fall prey to in our sugya and Bava Batra. That's the thing that we fall prey to every day, is that we're insufficiently me'ayin b'tfilatin. We're insufficient. We have insufficient kavanah in tefillah. So just to take a look at Rashbam versus Tosafot in terms of how they understand the concept and how it plays out in the sugya, right? Iyun Tefillah for Rashbam is a bad thing. It's about my expectations after Tefillah, and it's an attitude problem. It's a problem that I think that I understand the workings of the Ein Sof, and that I think that God ought to answer my prayers because I did such a good job davening. What we mean when we say Ein Adam Nitzol Menu B'chol Yom, right? If a person can't escape it, it's a bad thing, and that's why the fact that we're unable to escape it is a problem. According to Tosfot, Iyun Tefillah is a good thing, right? Iyun Tefillah in our sugya in Bava Batra is presented as a good thing. It's attention and attentiveness during Tefillah, concentration on the words and what they mean. And in Adam Nitzol, right, where we fall prey to this every day, that we're unable to manage to do it, unable to manage to do it right. And in terms of how the sugyot fit together, right, we have the sugya in Shabbat where Adam ochel peratan b'olam hazeh, with the sugya in Brachot where me'ayin b'tfilato magia lich'ev lev comes to right Iyun Tefillah brings pain of heart and maskirin avonotav shel adam, and we have in Bava Batra shalosh devarim she'en adam nitzol mimenu b'chol yom. So if you read the sugya like the Rashbam, where we would understand the sugya in Bava Batra according to or along with the meaning of the phrase from the sugya in Brachot, and the sugya in Shabbat, okay, it means something else there. Whereas if we understand the sugya like Tosfot, it's Brachot that's sort of left on its own. We're understanding the meaning of the Iyun Tefillah in Bava Batra the same way that we would understand it in Masechet Shabbat, and in Brachot it is left on its own. in terms of the kind of costs and benefits of each of these understandings, right? There's a benefit, um, really a textual benefit to the Rashbam's read, which is that if you think that Iyun Tefillah is a bad thing, then it fits better into this list of the three sins. Um, but the cost really is a cost in Svara, which is to say, like, is this really something that we fall prey to every day, right? Is this really the greatest challenge of tefillah? That I would think that I dive into so well that I ought to that my prayers ought to be answered. For Tosfot, it's the opposite, right? His benefit is a benefit of Svara. That's really um, where he's coming from when he decides to read the phrase against its kind of most simple reading, right? Which is that when he looks around at the people davening around him and sees like what really is the challenge. The challenge is that most people don't manage to have kavana during davening. And in that sense, the everydayness of this sin makes more sense on a savar level. The problem is textual, which is that in Adam Nitzomi B'choyom really sounds like it's something that you can't escape, and a Yud Tefillah here is something that then you can't do well enough. So it doesn't really fit into the list as well. But really, these two understandings of the phrase Iyun Tefillah kind of give us a window into different ways of thinking about honestly what the challenge of tefillah is the challenge that we don't that clearing our heads, managing to kind of stay focused and attentive to our conversation with God is something that really becomes challenging when tefillah is something that we're doing so frequently and becomes so ritualized. Or on the other hand, is the challenge of tefillah really more of a theological challenge, as the Rashbam understands, which is that the kind of humility that we have to adopt in the face of Hakadosh Baruch Hu when we turn to face God in tefillah, to say that like I'm doing the best I can, and even when I do the best I can, I don't know what it will mean in the long run, and I don't know how God is going to respond. Thanks so much, and see you next week.